Yeah, decent amount to cover tonight because we're going to try to thread the needle here and between admissions and financial aid because they are very much related. In our opinion, you kind of have to be fairly well versed on both, even if, for example, you don't think you're going to be eligible for financial aid. There is still, and we'll talk about it tonight, reason for you to pay attention, right? You don't need to be paying certainly the sticker prices and we can show you how to do a heck of a lot better. Um, so let's do some quick introductions. We'll go around the horn here. My name is Matt Carpenter. I'm one of the founders at College Aid Pro, class of 2025. I imagine a lot of you are class 2025s. This is a special class for me because this is a 20th class all guided through this process, which is amazing to say out loud. So like to think I've seen a lot of different things and worked with just about any situation, any colleges, and our whole goal is to just share our knowledge, right? Just create transparency in this process. I hope wake you up a little bit, right? We're really focused this year on this kind of mantra of, in some ways, trying to get people a little bit angry about the cost of college. And I'm going to share some things with you right at the beginning of this presentation. I think some of it will be new news to you that might make you a little bit angry, but our hope there makes us angry, right? But it motivates us, right? And that's the hope, motivate us, right? Get engaged, get activated. And that's going to be, again, something we're going to start with tonight if you're new to us, or we're going to continue with tonight if you've been following with us before. But let me introduce the fairy godmother of financial aid, Peggy Keough. She is out in Seattle, just outside of Seattle. And we're lucky to have her as always. But Peggy, why don't you say hi and get rolling?
Yeah. For you newbies, and actually you could put in the chat. We usually ask everybody just put in the graduating year of your child, high school graduating year. And if you're what we affectionately call one of our groupies, if you've been on a lot, or if you're new or middle of the road, we'd love to know that. That's super helpful. Yeah, I'm Peggy Keough, whatever you want to call me is fine. Um, I've been doing this not as long as Matt exclusively. I was in the financial world and a planner and always did stuff around college. But then when my two kids, my twins, hit high school, I really, really got deep into this. I'm not going to tell you how many years ago that was, but it was a while ago.
I'll come.
And this
Don't
is
worry.
all I do. This is what gets me out of bed, and just seeing it be hugely impactful for families time and time again. As I always say, my best credential is really that I've been there. I've been there. Both of these guys have younger ones. So they haven't been there in the emotional and the professional space. I've been there in both, right? So you'll get through it. It's crazy, but the getting guidance and being knowledgeable is the key, because then you can get through a process that's a little convoluted much better. So happy to be here. So I'm a new, if for you groupies, we got a new guy here. You might have seen JP before because he's not totally new, but compared to the old timers, he is. So we are excited to have him. I'll let him say hi, but he used to be the director of financial aid at, I'm supposed to call it USC, I've been told, not Southern Cal. Very popular school. Some of your kids might have it on the list. So he's got that hugely valuable. He's been behind the curtain, right? And that's hugely valuable for our whole team at CAP. We have a few experts that fall in that category. So JP, why don't you just take a minute and say hi?
Thank you for that. And just to be clear, I'm not the one who insisted you call it USC. Southern Cal is okay with me too. But anyway, so as Peg said, I used to be a director of financial aid at USC, worked in enrollment services. I worked in the dean's office. I was adjunct faculty at the end. I spent 18 years in higher education. I got to see all the behind the scenes, if you will, of how things really operate. And was part of that what we call enrollment services division that is all about how do we recruit the kids come to the school, and how do we get parents to pay, and behind the scenes I'd be like, parents, like, let's have a real talk about this. But like I said, I've seen it from behind the scenes and kind of know what's going on. And But since then, leaving USC, I've gone on and tried to really just really help families and parents figure out like the whole, how do we pay for school, how to, with the students, how do we get admitted to the school, how do we find those right schools? Because to me, it's two sides of the same coin. It's kind of the, what's the point of getting admitted into a great school if we can't afford it, and what's the point of finding an affordable school if I can't get admitted? So to me, they go hand in hand. So that's why I kind of dedicated the rest of my life, if you will, to my mission to helping families with both these issues.
All right, thank you for that. Let me a couple housekeeping things that we forgot to mention. Love questions, put them in the Q&A. We'll remind you if you forget. You can be anonymous, and then this is being recorded, so I know we will get that question, and we will send the recording out to you tomorrow. And for you groupies, we always reward our live guests, so please hang on to the end. We will respect your time and not go way over, but we'll have some discounts for you at the end, so hold on here. For you new people, we are College Aid Pro, and this really is our mission. Everything we do revolves around this end student debt crisis by empowering you to shop smarter for college. And as I said earlier, having the knowledge, understanding this process is huge, because otherwise you're what I call drifting through it. And it's a very expensive and stressful drip. So you are here. And so you are, as JP very eloquently put it, they really are intertwined, admissions and financial aid. So we're delighted to have JP here to talk about the admissions piece. So there we are. So everybody should have gotten an email earlier today. Matt will put this link in the chat. It's just mycap.collegeaidpro.com. Hit get started for free, and we strongly encourage you to set up your account. We can see that a bunch of you already have, so that's great. You're set. And ideally, you can have that open on the side so that as I'm talking about some of these things about financial aid, and as Matt is in the software talking about other things, you could actually be listening to us and then saying, okay, that's applicable to me, that's not applicable to me. And it'll be powerful for you. You might see, hey, I'm not eligible for financial aid anywhere, or just certain schools, and what does that mean? And as we're talking, I think it'll be hugely helpful. So definitely go in there. There's a few onboarding questions after you set up a username and password. And don't really stress about the onboarding questions, because at any time you can go in there and hit the profile tab and adjust everything. So it's not set in stone, whatever you put in there when you're onboarding. So go ahead and get that done if you haven't. And I'm going to turn it back to you, Matt.
Yeah, great. Thanks. And I think in the spirit of kind of these next couple of slides here, a word I've said it before tonight, you'll hear us say it all the time, is trying to help people create transparency, right? There's a lot of confusion in this process. It's a little bit of a black box, and that, at least setting up your account, you're starting this process on third base, right? To know what is your financial aid eligibility, what are colleges actually going to cost you. So and we'll do, I think, a pretty good job tonight of explaining high level how this process works. But that allows you to take a step further where you can see, well, how's it going to work for me and for my family and for my kid? Okay. So I'm sure this is a statistic that you all can relate to. Probably a few of you would raise your hands if I took a poll here. The biggest financial concern for parents or for families today, 73% of you, it's paying for college, right? And here's some of the common questions. Will I qualify for aid? What if we're a two-household family, divorced, separated? How does that work for us? I'm a business owner. What should I be thinking about there? Is my home equity going to count against me? At which colleges, right? I have to borrow. Which loan should I take? These are all the questions we have, and we totally get it. But here's the thing, and you can go to the next slide, Peggy, okay? Because again, I'm sure a lot of you can relate to this. I think it's helpful to figure out how did we get here, or motivating to figure out why is college so expensive, right? certainly we know it's not working for consumers, right? We all see the headlines. We're $1.8 trillion in student debt, right? Parent and student loans. So who's winning here? And the winners are ultimately in the middle, right? These three kind of massive entities. Of course, we'll start with the colleges themselves, right? NYU is going to be $99,000 next year. Okay. The year after next, okay, so for some of you that have class 2026 students, which I know is a group of you here, we're going to have a few dozen colleges that are going to be over $100,000 a year, right? It's pretty amazing. Now, we know a lot of that money goes to the great stuff, what we're investing in, right? The amazing professors, world-class facilities. We're getting this great experience. We're going to graduate and have great opportunities. But here's the problem, I guess, right? In terms of these colleges, okay, if you're in marketing, you want to be a CMO at one of these colleges, okay? Some of them make about $400,000 a year. On average, they have a full-time staff of between 9 and 24 employees. You have outliers like Purdue that have 250 employees between their marketing and communications departments. And these colleges have millions upon millions of dollars to give and deploy within their marketing department. Okay. Enrollment management, a lot of times is what they call it. You're paying for that. It's the consumers that are paying for that, right? We're not crazy about that. Okay. We don't like that. Now, who's some of the other winners here? The federal government. Now, I'm not saying this is with malicious intentions. A lot of this, I know I'm kind of pointing at some bad guys here, and I'm not saying that there's three evil geniuses sitting in a room somewhere, although sometimes I wonder. But the federal government, the biggest asset our federal government owns is parent and student loans. Okay, it's loans. 33% of our U.S. government's assets, okay, are in college loans. Okay, you could argue that our government needs college to be expensive. Okay, and then of course you have Wall Street. They're not going to miss out on this party, right? If you are fortunate enough to save money for college, you save via a 529 plan. Okay, right now Americans, we have over $600 billion invested in 529 plans. Okay, if you need to borrow money, Wall Street's going to win there too. Okay, you go to them, they give you a loan. We have over roughly $150 billion in private student loans. So we're creeping up on $1 trillion that Wall Street has and benefits from when college is expensive. So who misses out, right? Who's at the short end of the stick here? It's us. You hear, and you can go to the next slide here, Peggy, because I think the real superpower that these three entities have, if I could kind of point to one thing, is the fact that everybody, most people, they navigate this process completely on their own, right? And Peggy, you can go to the next slide if you don't mind. And that is, again, something that we don't do in any other facet of the biggest financial decisions that we make, right? We buy a home, we have Redfin, we have Zillow, there's an agent on both sides of the market, there's attorneys making sure that we get that right, taxes, we have a CPA, we have or we can, if we're a DIYer, we can use software, right? You kind of get the point here. College is the one thing that people navigate on their own, and that is the superpower that these entities have. If you think, if there's two tips I could give any family, so what can I do to save money on this process? Number one, start now. 27, I don't care, start now. 26, start now. Obviously 25, it's game time, right? And don't do it on your own. I don't care if you use just our free resources. I would rather have you work with some of our competitors than navigate this process on your own, right? And that is kind of why we exist. I hope that context is helpful. I just share it because I want it to motivate people. I think it should be talked about more. I think it should be headlines every single day because it's not going to stop. There is no bubble that's going to burst. The buck stops with us. Okay, Peggy, I'll get off my soapbox for a second.
Okay. All righty. Yeah, I will say, years ago they said, oh, nobody will pay $65,000 for college, $70,000, and look where we're at. So to Matt's point, the bubble isn't bursting. And as consumers, you make decisions to pay these prices, right? You don't go to the Maserati dealership, or at least I don't, right? Because I can't afford it. And so that's how you want to start thinking about this. But I think Matt's points should hit home. And these most of these colleges are nonprofits, but don't kid yourself, they're big businesses with, like Matt said, enrollment management departments. They have really slick marketing. They're good at it. They're good at it, especially the name brand schools. So now let's talk about how all this works. Because like I said, when I introed myself, you got to understand the arena that you're playing in so that you can leverage different pieces of it to your family's benefit when it comes to financial aid, and when JP's talking about admissions, same way. So the biggest takeaway around financial aid, you know, Matt's talking about $99,000 NYU. But if you know what you're doing, you can find good academic, personal, and financial fit colleges for your child, because the colleges are offering discounts off those sticker prices. Sure, there's some families that write a full check, but a lot of families don't. And it doesn't mean that it's a bad school because you're getting a discount, not in any way, shape, or form. So the colleges are doing this in 3 different ways. They can offer, on the far left, need-based grants. So this is free money, you're not paying it back. And as the name hints to, you have to have financial need. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. So that comes in the form of federal money, state money, but mostly institutional, meaning college endowments. Then there's merit-based scholarships, also free money, but not based on need. It's based on your child, grades, test scores, talents, you know, music, sports, whatever it happens to be. That's so ideally you want to maximize those two buckets, and it doesn't have to be one or the other. A lot of families, a lot of kids could potentially get both. And then that third bucket is self-help. So that's loans, which we're all familiar with. Loans aren't terrible. It's just a reasonable amount of debt and the right loans. We don't have any 24 families on here, so we're not going to get in the weeds on loans tonight. But, you know, it's part of a lot of people's strategies. And then the other piece in this bucket is work study. It's your child can get a job. And then some of that money pays for college. But the way these colleges, they will put all 3 of these on an award letter to take that sticker price, that cost of attendance, and start decreasing it, because it's all about net revenue for these colleges, not about everybody paying full price. And let me just show you an actual example. So the public school in this example is University of Washington, out in my neck of the woods, UW, and then Gonzaga, which is in Eastern Washington. So cost of attendance, very, very different. You know, let's just round up 35,000 versus 77. Easy to look at that as a family and say, we can't even afford 35 without loans. 77's off the list. What are you thinking, right? But this family has a student aid index, and I'll talk about that in a minute, of $30,000. But look what this student got. At the end of the day, and I don't have loans in this number, at the end of the day, UW, they're paying full price. They got some loans, but they have to be paid back, obviously. So full price. But look at Gonzaga. It's down to 40,000 without the loans added. So that's a really different conversation as a family. I know as a parent going through this twice, I might be okay with Gonzaga if there were certain reasons that was a really good academic and personal fit. I might say, yeah, that's worth it to me, for my child's future. This is what's happening all the time. This isn't rare. This isn't an anomaly. So please, please, please take this into account. Believe us. The cost of attendance is truly irrelevant. And as Matt said at the beginning, when you set up your account, we are immediately going to start showing you, here's the sticker price, but here's what we're projecting your family to pay. Sometimes it might be the same. That's good to know now, not senior year. So what these colleges do is they take this cost of attendance, this student aid index, and I will say, you will also see the term expected family contribution, because some colleges are still using that old term, still falls in the middle bucket. That's what gets calculated off the financial aid forms. They take their cost of attendance, they subtract that number, which that's the number they think you can afford for 1 year of college as a family. The difference is your need. So $90,000 school, $50,000 SAI, you've got 40,000 of need. Doesn't mean the college is going to say, here you go, Johnny, here's 40,000 in need-based grants. Most colleges will not do that. They don't have those kind of endowment numbers to support that, but that's your need. Sorry, I got some in my throat. Other example, $90,000 cost of attendance, $120,000 SAI. All three of us that are presenting tonight have absolutely seen those SAIs. If you see that on your screen, don't think, oh, I'm screwed. I can't do anything. That's absolutely not true. But obviously you don't have financial need. You could have a scenario where you have financial need at more expensive colleges, but not at others. One child could have it, could get some discounts, and another child might not get any discounts. So it's really dependent on the student and your finances. So let's take I'm going to cover this super fast, but let's talk about how this SAI gets calculated. There's parent and student assets, and there's parent and student income. On the asset side, the big takeaway is it's non-retirement assets. So not 401k, 403bs, IRAs, because those are retirement vehicles. 529s, any college saving plans like that, if you have a prepaid tuition plan, the parents are usually the owners of that. So that's an asset of the parent, not the student. If grandma and grandpa or anybody outside of the nuclear family owns the account and the student is a beneficiary, it's not included on the FAFSA, which is the main financial aid form, the federal form. So don't make that mistake. If you have custodial accounts, UGMAs and UTMAs, that's an asset of the student. And if you have any jointly owned accounts with your child, which is pretty common, that's an asset of yours if your name is on there. And realize that real estate that's not the home you live in is always going to be on the table. The equity in your real estate. And it's super important not to overvalue your real estate. The home you live in, if you own it and you're not renting, that's going to be looked at by some colleges, and Matt will point this out in a few minutes, but not at others. These are all these planning opportunities that are really, really important for you to understand. So that's the asset piece, and assets are assessed literally real time when you're submitting the forms. Income, on the other hand, which parental income is by far the biggest driver, just the percentages that are used to calculate the SAI, it's a 2-year look back. So I know we have a lot of 25 and 26 parents here. 2023 is your year for all you rising senior parents. So it's done. You're in that year if you have a rising junior. So if you get a promotion, that's awesome. Of course you're going to take it, right? But don't create income that's going to show up on your 1040 that's going to raise your income that you didn't have to do. Capital gains that can be avoided. People take out distributions, 401ks for this or that. So it's good to understand this ahead of time. Matt said start early. That's one of the many reasons. Mostly revolves around adjusted gross income. Kids, as you can see, can make over $9,400, and it's a wash. For the FAFSA only schools, which is the lion's share of them. So for most families, student income is not going to move the needle. So those are the two pieces. So if you're looking at your account and you're saying, well, yeah, Peg, I fall in that category where it doesn't look like we're going to get any need-based aid, but I can't or won't pay these huge sticker prices that you're sharing, there is another option that I talked about before. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Matt, to talk through that.
Yeah, 100%, right? So it just, by law of large numbers here, we can reasonably assume that a percentage of you, when you go to set up your MyCap accounts, boom, you're going to get these really high SAIs that are staring you front and center. And then we're going to kind of confirm for you, hey, look it, you're not going to be eligible for traditional need-based aid, traditional need-based grants, okay, at public and private colleges. But that's okay, right? To Peg's point, that doesn't mean we are going to be or should be paying full sticker price. So how do we get discounts, right? What are some other things that we can do that we can control? And the biggest one is scholarships, right? Who's going to give us merit-based scholarships? What are going to be good fits for our kids, still be great schools? And they're going to give us discounts just based on our credentials. And I'll tell you exactly how we search for that within our platform in a second, right? Or if you guys have it up in front of you right now, you can follow along with me. A couple other talking points before I jump into the platform. Number one, I just want to flag the fact that, especially for folks that aren't going to be eligible for need-based financial aid, you need to pay attention, because some of these colleges, even if you want to be considered for scholarships, you have to complete the financial aid applications, right? NYU is always a great example that we use there. It's one of the most popular schools every year in terms of the volume of applications that they receive. They do offer merit-based scholarships, but you can only be considered if you complete the FAFSA and the CSS profile. Okay, so you just want to cover your bases there. Another thing that I want to say almost in the same breath, not every college offers scholarships. And now there's about 100 colleges thereabouts across the country. Scholarships are not a thing. There's not one Ivy League college that offers scholarships. There's not one kid at MIT that's there on a scholarship. If you're not paying full sticker price at MIT or Middlebury or Bates or Bowdoin or Amherst or Williams, these types of schools, that means you're getting need-based financial aid. If you're not eligible for need-based financial aid, that's when you're paying full rack rate. So it's important to understand, well, what are those colleges that we know there's zero chance of getting a scholarship because they don't exist there. We want to know that going into the process. And another really important point here, and again, this is where it starts now, especially for your class 2025 families, we want to apply to competing schools. These are businesses. They compete with one another. It is very common that we will recommend colleges to families that we know we have zero intention of actually attending. We're just going to use that offer to go back and get more money from our top choice. So again, that's a strategy for everybody, but especially if you're a family that's a quote unquote full pay family or not eligible for need-based financial aid, create that leverage for yourself as you're building out this list. And Peg, if I could, let me share my screen for a second, because I'll jump into the platform. So for those of you that had it up or created your account, you know this is what your kind of home dashboard looks like. We're going to give you your SAIs front and center, staring you in the face. And then we're going to give you some context, right? What do your numbers mean in kind of layman's terms? But kind of the place that I want you living in the platform right now, okay, during this stage of the process, is understanding what colleges cost you. And this is a great example. This is a normal family, right? I'm like I mentioned here, outside of Boston, right? So these are some popular schools that folks around this neck of the woods and of course nationwide apply to. But for this family, it's going to be more affordable to go to the $95,000 college than it is to go to the in-state state university, right? Our flagship university, UMass Amherst. This is not a crazy one-off anomaly outlier. This happens all the time. And the headline here is that I don't want to build my list of colleges based on what they appear to cost on the surface, right? And there's some more nuance. There's some details. You know, why is it that Amherst and BC are almost identical prices? I sent all the same information to both of those schools, and it's going to be $16,000 more to attend Boston College. Well, Boston College looks at your home equity as fair game if you own your home. Okay. So does NYU. Even though Amherst is a school like those schools, uses a similar model, they don't look at home equity. I'm telling you more than you need to know. All this is baked into the algorithm, but you need to know, again, what are these schools actually going to cost your family? And let's start an example. Put in the chat right now, what's your top choice? Where you guys are excited to apply, or what's your alma mater? Let's look at a school, and I can drill down a little bit as to exactly how generous or not they are. So I'm going to put in Emory there. That's the first school that I saw pop up. Okay, I'm assuming Emory down in Atlanta, right? Again, $91,000 school. We're paying $24,000 to go there. Why? Well, if I pick on any school, it's going to give me a lot of great information. It's going to tell me, am I getting a scholarship there? Am I going to get need-based financial aid, right? As we look at admissions, it tells us our average GPA and test scores and our admit rates, okay? For every college in the country, we have every single scholarship that they offer, the qualifications for each, but we're going to tell you how much you're going to get. So when we talk about searching for scholarships, you're not going to find another tool out there that's going to allow you to do this. So you can put a whole bunch of admissions filters in there. For example, I'm going to say, I know my kid wants to be relatively close to home. I know they're going to be more comfortable in small schools, and they're thinking about majoring in bio. I can put whatever filters I want in there, and then I can just go say, I want you to sort them based on who's going to give me the most in merit-based scholarships. And we'll instantly rank order that. Now, Clarkson University, interesting little school, has some amazing sciences, right, at their school. They're going to give us a $40,000 discount regardless of our income, right? Wheaton College, again, same thing. They're going to give us, I think, 40 or something like that. So, and if we are eligible for financial aid, I can rank order just like that as well. Here's some amazing schools that fit our admissions criteria and are really generous with need-based financial aid. So again, this is just what you have access to and how you can build your list of schools with affordability in mind.
All right, now we are ready to turn this over to JP. So take it away there, buddy.
Thanks. So, tonight I'd like to just talk about, I guess, what I've been seeing happening with the admissions process in the last couple of years, but especially this past year. And so I'm going to talk about how acceptance rates are impacted by the deadlines you apply to, as well as how they're impacted whether or not you submit test scores. And then naturally that's going to lead into a conversation about standardized tests. And then I'm just going to give a simple overview of the admissions process, how it kind of looks. And then lastly, I'm going to share, I think, a little bit about what I think a successful college application looks like, and kind of the elements I put together to help my students, have a better chance of getting admitted into those schools that they want to, and win scholarships at the same time. So let's move on to the next one. And so as far as admissions trends, I think the easiest way to sum up the data that I've been researching is that more high school students are applying to college than ever before. Plus, they are applying to more colleges than ever before. So if we compare the present year, the most recent year, to the year before COVID, before that impacted college admission stuff, there's been on average, a 41% increase in applications to four-year institutions. Now, understand that a natural byproduct of increasing applications is that admissions rates will drop. Okay, so I use an example, for example, Caltech. The admissions applications there more than doubled in the past 4 years. But they don't have any more beds. So when the admissions applications doubled, their admit rate has dropped significantly. It's dropped by almost 60%. And so this is why most college experts warn families that it's getting tougher to get admitted into colleges nowadays. Simply put, there is more competition than ever before. Go ahead and next slide. Okay. Now, when it comes to, applying early action, early decision, all that stuff, I feel like that's starting to become the new normal, if you will. The number of students who apply to colleges in those early rounds has increased by 60% in the last 5 years. Nowadays, more than half of students apply to at least one college, either early decision or early action. They do it because there is statistical evidence that shows it's going to help increase their chance of admission. Now, I grabbed 3 schools in just different parts of the country here to illustrate my point. For example, at Northeastern, the difference between a regular admissions rate and the early admissions rate, it's almost 4.5 times higher. But you have a 4.5 times better chance if you apply early. At McAllister, it's about 3 times higher. If you applied at Claremont McKenna, again, about 3 times higher chance of getting accepted if you apply early versus a regular decision. And I would say that the reason that, applying early decision or early action, the reason it matters is because it helps the schools manage their perceived value and reputation. Got to remember, this is a $1 trillion business industry. For example, I'm going to just pick on Tulane for a second. Compared to 14 years ago, Tulane received about 12,000 fewer applications. Additionally, they admitted about 6,000 fewer students. But the end result tells a very different story. The end result is they enrolled 365 more students than 14 years ago. And keep in mind that the average net cost a family pays at Tulane is a little over $41,000. That translates to over $15 million more in revenue.
Hey,
So,
JP, can you just, somebody put in this question, but I'm guessing other people have it, so I want you to answer it live. Can you just explain the difference between early action and early decision?
sure. So
Thanks.
basically applying early decision, think of that as the committed application. You basically are telling the school, if you accept me, I'm coming. No questions asked. For the most part, you're committed to going. Early action is still applying early, but you're not committing to for sure coming there. You still have the option to choose another school. So when you apply early decision, you basically can only pick one school to do that, and your school counselor is going to sign off on that. You sign off on that, and you're saying essentially, if you admit me, I'm there. So that's early decision. Early action, you're not committed. You could still look at other schools. That'd be the simplest way I would explain the difference. So going back to the example of Tulane, so despite their, the number of overall applications going down, Tulane can argue that their popularity is not waning because they can control the narrative, because they can brag about their admission rate has significantly dropped. And that's a good thing to brag about for them, that they're more competitive. Their admissions rate has dropped. And their yield rate has significantly jumped. Now, how are they manipulating that admissions process to get these kind of end results, to get these numbers that they care about? Well, at Tulane, they only admit about 6% of their applications through regular admissions, but they admit about 68% through early decision. Significant difference, 10, 11 times higher chance if you apply early decision at Tulane. So again, they received less applications. They admitted less students, but they're making $15 million more in revenue. And they can brag that they have this low admissions rate and a high yield rate. This is an extreme example, but it perfectly illustrates how schools use enrollment management techniques to help them control the narrative regarding their reputation, as well as they make more money. Thinking in terms of a business, this was a brilliant move on their part. This was a good business move. Not necessarily a fair move for families, but a business move. This was genius. All right, move on. All right, so now let's talk about test scores and their impact on college admissions. First, I want to just stress, I want you to understand there's a difference between test optional and test blind. They're not the same thing. Approximately 60 schools in America are test blind, only 60. Half of them are in my state of California, the Cal State and the UC system. Half of them are here in California. The other half, that just doesn't really leave that many schools, about 30 schools throughout the rest of the country that are test blind. And on a side note, I will say test blind is a very misleading term. For example, the UCs and Cal States where I'm at, they're not, I would say not test blind. They rely on the GPAs, but they rely very heavily on your AP test scores. You have to have 4s and 5s on those AP test scores. So that, to me, is not test blind. They're just not looking at ACT or an SAT. But that's again, what they mean by test blind is that they're not using an SAT or an ACT. But I guarantee you they're using APs and the GPAs, of course. Now, as far as the schools that say they're test optional, what I keep hearing and heard for the last 4 years was I think a very erroneous assumption that meant we don't need to submit test scores. Is I would say the evidence shows that a better term to test optional is test encouraged. Because again, if you see the data, compare the side-by-side admissions rate here, there's a direct correlation between submitting your test scores versus and getting accepted versus not. It's, as you can see, it's not uncommon to have twice the better chance of getting admitted if you submit the test scores. And one major reason that test scores matter and why colleges are starting to bring back this requirement, it's true. Research shows that test scores are a better indicator of whether or not a student can handle the academic rigor of the college. And that's partly because they also know that they can't rely on GPAs because GPAs are way overinflated and they've kind of become unreliable. And I'll give you an example. The average GPA of a high school student in 1990 was a 2.68. That actually makes sense to me because most people are average, and that's what a C meant for like most people. C didn't mean anything bad. It didn't mean you were failing. It meant you were average, and average was good. But nowadays, you can't be average. You can't have a C. That's considered a failure in kids' minds. And half of the high school students in America have a GPA of A- or better. And so in the last 30, 40 years, GPAs have increased. However, the scores on those standardized tests, ACT and SAT, they have steadily dropped. And last year they hit a record low. So despite what the GPAs are saying, there has been an actual real decline in what students are learning. And that is actually translating to what colleges are now seeing. And especially during this test optional trial, if you will, colleges have been doing a lot of surveys with their incoming freshmen. And what freshmen are self-reporting as their biggest struggle when it came to transitioning to college, it was that transitioning to the academic rigor of college. They just felt unprepared. A number of schools have discovered that they're having a growing student population of students who are struggling academically. In fact, UT Austin, they did their own internal research and released this, that they showed that in these last 4 years, they compared the GPA of their college GPA between the students who submitted test scores and who didn't. And the students who did submit their test scores have a 0.86% or 0.86 grade point higher than the students who didn't submit their test scores. Now, that might not seem like a big number, but that's the difference between a C+ and an A-. Again, for a school's reputation, I can see why schools want to bring back standardized tests. I mean, it's not a good look when students are failing at a particular college. So if standardized tests are helping colleges better predict if the student is going to successfully transition to college, they're going to use it. Now, I will admit, and this ties into the second point here, test scores, standardized test scores, they admittedly have also gotten a little inflated in the last couple of years because the students who have been submitting them typically were on the higher end of the average, the reported average. So that has become a bit inflated. And so what I tell my students, the ones I advise, I go back and look at that they call it the 50% range, it's 25% to 75%. I go back and look at that 25% number pre-COVID. And if my students' test scores are above that 25% threshold from pre-COVID, I tell them go ahead and submit. I haven't had any issue. It's been great. So I look at that. I don't necessarily look at the last couple of years of test scores. I go back to pre-COVID test scores. And so with that, let's just kind of move on to, let's talk about the difference between an SAT versus the ACT. So I think of it, the ACT, I'll pick on that one first because that's the one I did as a kid. Think of that as kind of like a speed test, because even though it's a longer test, you actually have less time for each question. There's just more questions. And because it's a longer test, I tell my students, like, we have to be wary about testing fatigue. It's a real thing. And so if the endurance isn't there, maybe I don't like the ACT, but if we have the endurance, great. Just know it's more of a speed test. As far as the SAT goes, you'll see it's broken down to basically math and then reading and writing. They combine that. Whereas the ACT is broken down to math, reading, English, and science. Even though that's different breakdowns, 80% of the content overlaps on both tests. Now, the SAT math, that tends to deal more with trigonometry and graphing, along with algebra 2, and there is some geometry. The new online SAT has the Desmos calculator built in. And I'll just say, if the student's not familiar with Desmos, get familiar with it, because it is a different interface than a traditional TI calculator. The SAT's reading and writing section, basically you have 50 short little reading passages, and you answer one question on each passage. So short, quick, boom, boom, boom. Whereas the ACT, the math is more advanced. It goes up to pre-calculus. The ACT's reading involves only a couple reading passages, but they're long reading passages. And then they get asked a bunch of questions about that passage. The English section, that's just simply is going to test grammar, punctuation, sentence structure, the stuff I don't know if they teach anymore, what the kids struggle with, because all we do is text. But anyway, that's the English section. And then there is a science section. And I think call it a science section is kind of a misleading, because it's really more just interpreting data and then reading graphs. But generally speaking, I'll also say you're going to probably not do the essay portion of either test. It's sometimes required for international students, and there are a couple high schools that require it for graduation, but other than that, you're going to avoid the essays. And often I get asked, well, which test should I do? The schools value them both equally. So I always tell my students, do whichever one you're going to perform better on. And so, or maybe if they perform equally, then which one did you prefer? So I always recommend we take a diagnostic exam on the ACT and the SAT, just so that we can see the results, and then they get a better sense of which test they preferred. And we'll make a decision based on that. All right, next one. Okay, college admissions process. So admittedly, it's impossible to say, hey, every college does it the same way, because that's not true. So this is just kind of a sample of what I usually see. Especially with the bigger schools, there's usually a territory admissions counselor assigned. So if somebody is, let's say, works for Northeastern, they might be, though, assigned to California, or they might be assigned to the Southwest as a whole. So there's going to usually be like a territory college admissions counselor, if you will. And so they're usually the first reader. And so when you submit an application, they take a few minutes, not a whole lot. They're going to quick look through like GPA, test scores, all that, and then glance through the application, the rest of the application. And then it's basically, if they, whether they think yes or no, it's going to get a second reader. If it's in the no pile, the second reader is probably going to spend only 30 seconds on it. But if it's in the yes pile, the second reader is going to also spend a few minutes on it as well. Then it typically goes to a committee. Now, that committee, some schools, that territory manager and that second reader might be a part of that committee. Sometimes they're not. They're trying to really eliminate any bias, if you will. So that can vary from school to school. And then for the cream of the crop, those that we think should be considered for a scholarship, again, that usually becomes another new committee that's trying to minimize or eliminate any bias. And they will evaluate, hey, here's the very top of the top that we think should be awarded a scholarship. Admittedly, there's also a special committee that looks at this kind of, I joke, it's where Varsity Blues came in. There's usually a special committee, a subcommittee that looks at, like, for athletes, or if if schools are still value legacy. Not that many do anymore, but or if there's a specific academic program that is new and they're trying to encourage extra, build enrollment for, they might create little special subcommittees for those groups. But in the end, there's usually then the final dean or associate dean or whatever title they give them that signs off on the final approval. So it's not just one person making the decision; it goes through multiple layers. But that's a very generic, but hopefully a helpful understanding of that process that the college application goes through to either being a yes or a no. Okay. Next. So just to kind of share a little bit what I think and what I work on when it comes to putting together a successful college application, trying to get as many wins as possible. Obviously I spent a fair amount of time talking about GPA and test scores. And yes, this is what I call the hard data. Hard data is important. And admittedly, some consultants are going to call this your defensive strategy. But hear me on this. Hard data, meaning GPA and test scores, that does not get your child admitted into a college. Okay? It does not get your child admitted. It's giving the admissions counselor a reason to not immediately reject them. So if I know we need a student GPA to be at least on average 3.5, and if it's below that, I don't think that we have data that says they can't handle the academic rigor. If I see a 2.5 GPA, it's just an easy no. But if it's a 3.5, okay, it's a yes. Well, let's continue reading the application. So it doesn't win the admissions decision. It just gives them a reason to continue on with the process, if you will. So it's important to have that good hard data. But even so, I always tell my kids, remember, your child is more than a number, and those scores don't define who they are, okay? Now, moving on to the soft data, I think in many ways the soft data has more influence, certainly more than most families realize. And some consultants are going to call this your personal brand or your offensive strategy. And for me, I find it very helpful when the student knows their why, when it comes to college admissions. If the student can explain why they want to go to college and explain how they're going to make a positive impact on the world, it's so much easier to get them involved with the extracurricular activities that are, true to their brand, true to their genuine, authentic self. Activities that demonstrate initiative and impact. And all those are things that matter. So it's not about being involved in a lot of different things. Like, we don't want to be a well-rounded student. And it's not even about so much even leadership nowadays. So it's more about impact, initiative. And so, like, I tell my kids, like, if you're going to be in football and you're going to be the captain of the football team, or maybe you're going to be president of the student, student body, any of that kind of stuff. Hey, if you do it because it fills your cup and you enjoy it, by all means, do it. But don't do it because you think it's going to impress an admissions officer, because it doesn't. There are 100,000 other students in this country who can say the same thing and are applying to those schools too. So that's not going to help you stand out, if you will. But an example I'll give is I'm working with a kid right now who family suffers. In the family, they have chronic food-based illness, right? And they all suffer for it. And when they research the topic, and they're like, a lot of this is based upon the chemicals that the USDA allows in our food sources, our food chain, if you will. Like, this student is doing research on that. She's started a club. She's reached out to professors who do this as their research, and she's like, how can I help? She's trying to show initiative. She's blogging about it. She's trying to educate people. She's showing initiative. She's trying to make an impact. She's educating people. That kind of stuff shows way more initiative and is going to impress an admissions counselor far more than, just like, oh, I got good grades and all that stuff. She's got good grades, but it's all this other stuff, this soft data, that really matters. And then just lastly, I'll say value alignment. This is a moving target sometimes because institutional priorities change from year to year. Let's say university open a new nursing program, then they're going to want to recruit students for that. Or maybe they're low on donations, so they're going to try to recruit potential donors. Maybe the school's underrepresented by gender or geographic location. Then they're going to try to recruit to build up those numbers. And oftentimes you might not have any idea what the school's priorities will be. But sometimes you can get clues by paying attention to what they post on their website and social media. And now here's the difficult thing when it comes to this soft data and the institutional priorities. It's not easily tracked like hard data. And that's why I don't like predictive models where, and not to bag on it, but software that like Naviance or Score or any other of the software platforms, they try to run these predictive models based upon the hard data. That only weighs about 30% of the admissions decision. It doesn't take into account the other 70%. So for me, we have to put together a holistic admission strategy that combines the hard data and the soft data and value alignment. This is probably why my students have 3 to 5 times higher chances of getting admitted into these selective schools. And but with that said, there are obviously no guarantees. And I would say if anyone, because there are companies out there, we're not one of them, but there are companies who say, we guarantee you'll get admissions to those schools. Run away. Those are very much scams, okay? Just remember, the college is, again, not trying to admit a well-rounded student, but they're trying to create a freshman class that is a very well-rounded student body, very different thing. And that's a very subjective task. And so if we can highlight the student's unique, genuine, authentic self and make them stand out as like, this is why I'm awesome, that helps with the whole theme to their application, if you will. All right, that's
Thanks,
all I
JP.
got.
No, I appreciate it, brother. Let me, and Peg, if I could, I'll share my screen if you want to quickly show the, yeah, that's fine. So look, I want to make sure that you guys have a good understanding of specifically how we can help you, and specifically JP. JP, I like to call, he's a little bit of a unicorn in that most people in our space, you're either an admissions expert or you're a financial aid expert. JP is one of the few that's both, which I think is a huge advantage for families that he works with specifically. I'm going to highlight and make a recommendation for what I think is the best thing that we can do to help you. And again, specifically, JP, this is a little bit more about us. Between our whole team, over 200 years of experience, we've guided over 100,000 families. JP, the former director of financial aid at USC. We have the current director of financial aid at MIT, at Harvard, the former director of admissions at BU, at UC. I share this because this team, in addition to, yes, you can work with JP one-on-one, but he has this whole backstop of us collectively kind of supporting you behind the scenes, okay? And this is just some of the data that we have. Now, on average, we save families about $70,000 over the course of 4 years, okay? We were getting on here when we were in the green room, just before we started the presentation, JP went on record and he said, I guarantee I will save any family that works with me at least $20,000. So there you go, JP. We're on record. This is being recorded. We are officially holding ourselves out there.
I'm
Another
Santa Claus for a reason. I can
Santa
deliver.
Claus. Exactly. There you go. On average, we're saving families about 120 hours, right? That's time that you get back with your kid. I think a great part about having somebody involved with the admissions process is that we're really pushing the student there. You don't have to be the one to do that. We're the ones holding them accountable, again, specifically JP. And then we're helping you, parents, with the financial aid process. You heard JP say this too, on average, 3 times more likely to get into your top choice, okay? If you work with us through one of our admissions offerings. Again, we have data to support that. The way that I articulate it, it's like your kids have worked their butts off, right, to build this great house, but in such a competitive environment that this is now, that's almost not enough. I know that sounds harsh, but it's not just having this beautiful house. We need to know how to stage it, right? We need to know how to make sure it shows up on the internet the right way. And that's what JP and our admissions experts do. Just making sure that all of these nuanced parts of the process, all those boxes are checked, because guess what, since we have experts that have been on that side of the fence and still are in some cases on that side of the fence, we know what applications get accepted and which ones don't, based on those ones that are jump balls, right? So again, we have a financial aid part of the process and admissions part of the process. For the financial aid part of the process, let me just kind of, I'll quickly walk through it here. We do all your financial aid applications. So JP is going to do your FAFSA. He's going to do your CSS profile. It's like having a great CPA. How you present your situation is going to dictate what you do in terms of deductions. JP used to be on the other side of the fence. He knows how to complete these applications in a way that's going to get you the biggest discounts, right? He knows which schools are competing with one another. He knows how to go back to these schools and negotiate, appeal for more money, right? And finally, make sure that you're paying the bill the right way. So that is just a few of the tangible deliverables, right, that you're going to get here. And then, of course, there's the admission side. So in this package that I'm going to recommend, you get 20 hours of JP's time with your student. So this is, again, making sure that you're resume, right? Your Common App is completed the right way. You're nailing your essay. Should you do the ACT, the SAT? Is it both? Should you submit them? Should you not submit them? These are just mission critical decisions that, again, we're going to make sure that you get right. Okay. So here's our deal for tonight. You get our full admissions, you get our full unlimited financial aid package, you get our admissions package, that is the entry level package, okay, that includes that 20 hours. And again, and you have JP. Now JP's roster is almost full, specifically for the class of 2025. So if you're even considering it, don't overthink it. Sign up tonight, because if you sign up tonight, you get 20% off, right? So this is an unbelievable deal. Yes, it's a lot of money, but when we're looking at the size of these investments, you're not going to find a better deliverable at a better price point. So it's 20% off if you sign up tonight, again, and that guarantees you'll have JP, right? If you sign up tonight, again, his roster will close. Another thing that's important to mention, we go up in price July 1st, and then we'll go up in price again August 1st, and then September 1st. As we get closer to our deadlines, we have to increase our prices because our roster fills up and we have to do basically rush delivery to get things done. So that is the reason why. Now, I understand this is a big price point, especially if you're new for us. Be like, I just met these guys. How am I going to make a commitment like this? Sign up tonight, lock in the deal. If you're having any type of buyer's remorse tomorrow or anything like that, and you just want to gut check it with somebody one-on-one, either myself or JP will talk to you. And if you feel like, you know what, that actually was an impulse buy, I don't want to do it, 100%, no questions asked, we'll get you your money back. Just write into support@collegeaidpro.com after you buy. Maybe, for example, you haven't got a chance to talk to your spouse, or maybe your ex-partner, right? You want to talk to them first. Buy it tonight so you lock in the 20% off. Okay. And then you can talk to us tomorrow, or we can talk to or Friday. And again, if it's not the right fit, we'll give you a full refund. Okay. Now,
hey Matt, is that just, I just want to make sure, because the coupon code that's on there, it's not Wake Me Up 20. I think it's Wake Me Up 20.
It is Wake Me Up 20. Yeah.
All
So
right,
this
so
is
I'm putting that in the chat. Okay,
Yeah,
everybody, it's Wake Me Up 20, not Wake Me 20. Okay.
Thank you for catching that. Yeah, this is the correct one, right? So if you can put this, I will put this.
I'll put this link in this link for the page that Matt's on right now in the chat for everybody.
And let me just look at, if you're just heard what I said and go look at, I'm just a DIYer, okay? I'm not, or maybe I couldn't even entertain that price point, even if you know the guaranteed return of $20,000 on that. We're going to stand tall on that. But if that's not you, if you're a DIYer, you can get the full version of our platform for free and a whole bunch of other tools that we have in addition to the software. You get member-only workshops, right? You get member-only office hours every other week. But where, again, you can get started for $25 and then you can cancel anytime, and it's $9.99 a month after that. So if you just know that, look, I don't want or need all the one-on-one help that JP has to offer, sign up at least for the full version of the platform and make sure that you have the tools, right? Again, don't do it by yourself. If you're a DIYer, at least use the TurboTax of this process. You're going to be more successful. Okay. And again, obviously, if you invest in a CPA, you're going to save more money, have less headaches, whatever. Just, I think that's a pretty good comp for what JP is going to do for you here. Yeah, and so I think those are the highlights. Let me see if I get any questions here. Yeah, let us know. The work seems to be working for free. Yeah, if you're a Los Alamitos parent or student or family, you get the platform for free. You don't get our one-on-one services for free, but you don't have to pay this fee right here for the DIYers. Okay.
Yeah, just use this link. I don't know why a couple people are having issues with the PDF link. It's working for me. But this page will take you there. Right. Just hit sign up and you'll be good to go. So that's been posted a couple times in there. Exactly. Somebody put in a comment, I need every penny. Totally understand what you're saying. as JP said, we're not going to guarantee you anything. Matt went through our stats. We're not that kind of company that's going to pressure and guarantee you something. I can just tell you that having somebody guiding you on the admission side, I mean, the admissions piece is one thing. On the financial side, which is the part that I know super well, you can make errors that can literally cost you way more than what you would ever pay us for help. So it's your call. You have to be able to sleep at night and feel good about it. But everybody could, in theory, do their own taxes, but many people pay a CPA because they don't want to make a mistake. They don't want to mess up, and they might still owe the government money, and now they've paid a CPA, but they owe a refund. It's the same sort of thing. So it's just,
Yeah, and let me grab this because a couple people are asking, can we just do a financial aid only package? The answer is yes, right? We are highlighting the combination tonight, but let me go grab a
yeah, and JP can do that too. He can help you just solely on the financial side. So
yeah, give me just 1 second here, team, and I will get that for you. Okay. Yeah, and this, I'm grabbing it right now. And I can show you quickly here. And the one that I just shared will show kind of our whole suite of services, right? So if you just want help on the financial aid, right? It's $3,000, okay? And the 20% off tonight, right? If you just want, hey, that's the only thing I care about. We're okay with admissions, or we're already working with an IEC, whatever. We have that. If you just want admissions help, right? We have, our package that includes up to 20 hours for $39.99, right? 20% off tonight, or unlimited hours, okay, but up to 10 applications, $69.99, and then we have the combinations, right? And so again, if you want unlimited admissions and unlimited financial aid, it's the $94.99 plus the 20% off. So again, we featured this package tonight, obviously, but that's kind of our full suite of comprehensive services. Okay. Yeah, SA help, guys. Yeah. Yeah, there's no discount on the $25 offering that we have.
yeah, if those numbers are just, we just can't do that's all good, right? Do the DIY pack. We have hours that we can do with you, with people like JP. All three of us do hours, and we have a whole team that does hours. So we don't want to leave anybody behind. Don't feel badly if those numbers it's just not affordable.
Yep,
We've got
exactly.
other ways we can.
Exactly. All right. Well, that looks like we've more or less. Yeah, guys, I know it's $149 on the website, right? This is a unique offering for tonight. For like I said, we take care of our live folks. So if you to just have the software on if you just go to the internet or you don't show up to one of our things, it's $149. This is unique tonight, just the way the discount code is unique for tonight. All right, yeah. So look, hopefully you learned a bunch here. It's a lot to cover in a short amount of time. But again, the themes, guys, start now and don't do it yourselves, right? We are most confident in our ability to educate and guide people. But even if you just stick with our free resources, take advantage. Stick with us, right? If you want to, but keep paying attention, right? Don't stay engaged. And again, we're standing tall, saying if you decided to take the investment in us, we're certainly guaranteeing that we're going to save you the 20,000 there. Okay. Yeah, and the code is wake me up 20, guys. Wake me up 20. Yeah, and I one last time I'll just kind of show you the whole journey here before we cut out. And obviously, Peg, JP, feel free to jump if you want. But through the website that we shared in the chat here, when you go to sign up, it will bring you to our proposal, and then right through the right through the proposal. You can either scan the QR code, right, or just click on the link here. And this will bring you to the checkout page where you can decide if you want to pay monthly. There is a finance charge that we have in here if you pay monthly, or you can do it one time, right? And when you hit pay, I want to pay one time. Now it'll ask you for the coupon code, right? So this is where I say, wake me up 20, apply it, and boom, I'm taking off $1,300 and we're off to the races. And you'll hear from our team quite literally tomorrow, and probably JP as well. And we'll get you rolling this week. Like I said, it's game time here. So, all right. Thanks for staying on a little bit later, Peg and JP, and obviously everybody else. And thanks for all the great questions and engagement. And we're looking forward to helping everybody.
Have a great night, everybody.
All right, everybody.